tag with the best political tag team on TV. The Turks over there in the lobby are going crazy. They're wondering what's going on, but you know, it is what it is.
They brought me a from Turkey.
We've got Barrack with the 2 R's, Muluka, the man from Emanuelia, and Dr. PLO Lumumba on the bench. We're talking issues. What's happening around the country? New events making news the past week or so. So, gentlemen, we're talking before the break. By the way, keep tweeting at Barrack M, at it's PLO Lumumba, at Koinange Jeff, the hashtag Madaraka. Before the break, we'll talk about the Supreme Court. Looks like the Supreme Court has gone rogue. Doctor, you're a constitutional lawyer.
I'm a lawyer, and it pains me to see the Supreme Court in the situation in which it is. And it is in a very untenable situation. In fact, there are those of us who now believe, and those within the legal fraternity who now believe, that the Supreme Court, as currently constituted, will be the next victim after the IEBC. Because if you look at the individual members and the institution as it was, it has never recovered from the presidential petition decision, and things have been on a downward spiral from that moment on. And if you look at the communication between the Chief Justice and judges, one wonders whether that kind of communication should be in the public domain. Of course, I know the matter is sub judice, so there is a sense in which we cannot speak about it as candidly as we would have loved to. But the truth is, it is untenable, it is undesirable, it is unfortunate, and I think the sooner it's resolved, the better for the sake of this country.
Absolutely. Barrack, is Dr. Willie Mutunga, the CJ, is he in charge, or has he packed his rucksack, put his earring on, and is ready to walk out the door?
I don't know whether it is Dr. Willie Mutunga or it is the entire lot of them. I think one of the mistakes that we seem to have made from the word go was perhaps thinking that we could source people from outside the judiciary and place them at the apex of the judiciary, and that they would function very well. Because if my memory and knowledge serves me well, all these people, almost without exception, are from outside. You would talk about maybe 1 or 2 judges who had grown and mellowed up within the judiciary, and therefore they lack the sobriety of judges. Remember, we used to talk about sobriety, and we would say that you should be
sober as a judge.
And we are not seeing that sobriety. That if we were ever to talk about an institution that came very close to a communion of saints, that the Supreme Court ought to be that institution.
And it hasn't been.
It has been very far from that. It has behaved as if it was a band of something, Tower of Babel, says,
absolutely.
And that it has refracted attention from what it's supposed to be doing, refracted it to itself, and that now when the Supreme Court sits, it sits not to preside over things that are being brought to it by citizens, but to talk about itself. It becomes a self-serving court,
which is terrible. You know why? Because if, look, whatever the retirement age is, whether it's 72 years old or 74, if people want you to go, you go.
You go, for God's sake.
Thank you.
And in any event, I keep on asking myself, what is it that one wants to do after 70? If you've struck 70 and you've served your nation and you've not achieved it, why remain there? And the Constitution is very clear. When they swore to defend the Constitution of Kenya 2010, that Constitution set the retirement age at 70. And it doesn't take a first-year law student to say that that is the law. The High Court has said as much. The Court of Appeal has said as much. The Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya has already demonstrated that the 2 judges, I'm attaining my 70th birthday, I'm going home. Why struggle to remain?
Why stay?
You could use the next 2 years writing your memoirs.
It is,
for God's sake.
Go on, Barrack.
Unbridled self-focus, that it doesn't matter what you step on, what you trample on. It doesn't matter whom you run through. It doesn't matter what the welfare of the country is. It is your unbridled ambition that you must achieve. that maybe at some point your father may have been a chief justice somewhere, and so you also say one of these days I must become chief justice.
Yeah, chief justice of a village maybe. It's ridiculous.
But a chief justice nevertheless.
No, but it's wrong, Doctor. It's wrong. Because you know what you said earlier on. If the IEBC is in a shambles, if the Supreme Court has gone rogue, if that next election is questioned, goes all the way to the Supreme Court, what's going to happen?
But who would go to the Supreme Court as presently constituted? Nobody would. And in my mind, I'm so clear that the Supreme Court ought to be reconstituted.
All of them?
That does not mean that they go home. Reconstitution could mean
they come back or reapply.
Reapply, and there'll be some of them who will remain and some who will go. As it is now, Judge Mutungi is already retired. I believe the Deputy Chief Justice ought to go home. I believe Judge Tunoi ought to go home.
Yes.
And I think that is the proper thing to do. And once they do that, we'll have new appointments and we'll have good men and women who can serve this country and who will have the benefit of doubt that if called upon to preside over a dispute, they'll give a decision which will be acceptable to the people of Kenya.
Barrack, should the Supreme Court be reconstituted? We know 3 of them are gone. 3 out of 7 are on their way up. Hopefully. Maybe.
Well, I've talked about a communion of saints. And I'm reminded of a friend of mine who spoke elsewhere about the masked egugus that we read of in Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart.
Yes.
These are normal human beings who are elders within the society, but who preside over matters of litigation within that society. And when they are presiding, they wear masked, and they are becoming something close enough to gods. They are the spirits of the dead. And although you may know that Egugu there is Ogbefi Okonkwo, nobody dares to say that that looks like Okonkwo, because he has been elevated to another level. He is next to the gods and the ancestors. And so in his entire performance and comportment, he behaves in that dignified fashion. Now we're talking here about individuals who have eroded the decorum and the dignity of the Supreme Court. They have ordinarized the Supreme Court. It's looking like a ragtag of a thing. And the best thing for them to do for themselves, for the profession, for the judiciary, and for the law, the institution of the law, is to go home.
Absolutely.
Go home.
And go home. Remember that as Barrack has rightly said, whether it's right or not, almost all of them, save one, have been censured in one way or another, and they cannot in good conscience continue to preside. And one of the things that I find very annoying in this country is that individuals cannot recognize that it's time to leave the stage. This victimization by what I call the prima donna syndrome, the refusal by people to leave the stage when it's the right time to leave the stage, is the undoing of this country. And because of that, the country suffers, and we suffer so much pain. If this individual in these institutions, I served myself as the director of the Anti-Corruption Authority. My office was abolished by an act of parliament. My 4 assistants were removed from office when they
didn't cling on.
I did not cling on. There was a court order to allow me to cling on, but I said once a decision has been made, whether I like it or not, I don't care about my salary for the next 4 years, and I left, and here I am. I'm not dead, by God's grace.
No, you're not.
I'm here.
Nice
I'm
suit.
serving.
Nice suit.
A nice suit
from Turkey.
by God's grace. God is ever gracious.
You know, it is so true, Dr. And you know, Barrack, the same thing. People want to cling on forever.
They're talking about their careers.
Yes.
When you listen to the chair of the IEBC,
yes,
he's talking about a career. But it's a career that is tainted, that people can no longer have confidence in you even when you're in that career. And we look at you and we say, look at this clinger. Why can't you just
walk away,
do the noble thing,
walk away,
that my reputation and my integrity has been placed on the weighing scales, and they are saying that it's been found wanting, and therefore the best thing for me to do is to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you think that you need to be vindicated You then set in motion the process that is going to vindicate you in the fullness of time. And if there's anybody whom you consider has defamed you in the process, you take action against them.
Absolutely.
But here people cling onto these things as if their whole life depends upon it.
And Dr. Ari, it's such a good point, because let's face it, and sometimes we fail to call a spade a spade. And when you see these leaders of court leaders taking the tear gas, sitting on the side of the pavement, and they're in tears, and you look back at images from 1992, 24 years ago, same leaders, same tear gas, same images, deja vu all over again.
Deja vu is the correct word. We have come so far, yet we have moved so little. We thought that a new constitutional dispensation would help us solve these problems that we had included in the constitution, civilized ways of resolving our disputes, but we still think that we can ignore all the institutions and have extra institutional solution to problems. And the problem is that we as a people, our leaders think that things will solve themselves, and we as a people don't recognize that democracy works on the basis of continuous dialogue in a structured manner. Parliament is a forum of dialogue. If I was the President of the Republic of Kenya, what I would do is to institute a quarterly audience with the opposition. See, when the President called the leaders of the opposition yesterday, the day before, was it yesterday?
It was yesterday.
They abandoned the
Pictures
funeral.
everywhere.
They abandoned everything they were doing.
Even funerals.
Which means that they are ready to dialogue with the President. What you need is to structure it. And if they did, there are many things that could be achieved in that environment. So that this saber-rattling, this grandstanding, which puts us in what one may call a Mexican standoff, is completely unnecessary.
Because everyone's going to die in a Mexican standoff.
In a Mexican standoff, everybody dies unless there is an intervention.
We must ask, what happened over the past few hours? What happened within the space of about 15 or so hours after these gentlemen left State House?
Yes.
Because the atmosphere was convivial. We saw very friendly people. We saw the whole spirit of bonhomie, and we even read today's headlines, which were saying breakthrough. They're all proclaiming breakthrough, and we saw that there was a breakthrough, but it turns out to be just the lull in the middle of a terrible storm. And we see that here are people who seem to have been invited to Nakuru, and who seem to have confirmed that they were going to attend the function in Nakuru, and we saw that there were seats there with their names, but they didn't turn up.
By the way, what was Kalonzo? Is he out of town?
I'm told he's out of town.
So what
Missing in
went
action,
wrong?
as it were.
What
went wrong in the last
went
15
wrong?
hours? And that's the question I want to bring to you, pose to you, gentlemen, after the break. And that is, come on, moving forward, we'll come back to what we talked in the beginning. Are we that stupid? Are we the fools in this game? Shakespeare would have had a field day with us, seeing the situation in Kenya right now. He would have had a field day.
That's
But you know, Jeff, democracy presupposes that the people know what they want.
But we don't. We're stupid. We're children.
But it would appear to us that in this country we elevate political leaders to a very high pedestal of demigods, and that immediately one is elected, they know everything. And remember, it was said a long time ago that leaders who arrogate to themselves the monopoly of wisdom often lead their countries through shortcut to chaos. And we are playing along. We are urging them along. And my view is that the people must begin to demand of their leaders certain standards. We don't.
And that will not happen. It will not happen.
Not in our lifetime.
Not in our lifetime. Because we all want to worship outside
hero worship,
empty tribal shrines, where there is no God.
Correct.
But we believe that there's a God
inside there somewhere.
Inside that empty tribal shrine. So it's not going to happen in our
100%,
lifetime.
gentlemen, 100%.
And that is our undoing.
And by the way, you once told me on a different bench we spoke on, you said, the true leader, see if I get it wrong or right, a true leader talks about the next generation.
Not the next election.
Not the next election.
In fact, I said a politician talks about the next election, a statesman talks about the next generation.
PLO.
I'm saying they are not statesmen as it is.
There are
We
not.
have politicians who are worried about the next election, not the next generation.
PLO, Barrack Muluka, in their own words. This,
And sometimes it's the next selection.
not election. I'm telling you, JKL on this Wednesday, somebody say, oh my. By the way, we're still awaiting. You see the red carpet over there? Okay, just show that shot. Red carpet at the Villa Rosa Kempinski, waiting for Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, who should be arriving any moment now. They're coming here to sign billions and billions of shillings of deals. There's a lot of investment going on, despite our stupidness and our madness. Gentlemen, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Isn't it? I hold the thought. I had it coming out.
Keep tweeting at Barrack M, at its PLO Lumumba, at Koinange Jeff. The hashtag Madaraka, because it is Madaraka Day. Jeff Koinange live at the Villa Rosa Kempinski takes a break. We'll be back. Keep tweeting, and I'll read your tweets when you come back. Keep tweeting. We're back in a moment.